not a compliment. For that, I thank you.
What is happening now? There are hopeless and hungry.
Now it's time for us to stand up for God or we fall to nothing.
It's time now for Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
Listening to the general public, what the public is saying.
And good afternoon, Radio Cayman Nation, and a very happy Thursday to you. Thank you for tuning into your station of the nation, Radio Cayman. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. The countdown on week one is on, 4 days in already. We do have a very special show today, and pleased to be sharing the Talk Today studio with several of my media peers from around the island. Right now in the studio, we have Mr. Ralph Lewis from the Caymanian Times, and Miss April Cummings from right here at Radio Cayman. And joining us in due course will be Mr. Andrel Harris from Compass Media and Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service. As always, we do welcome your stories, feedback, and questions, and invite you to join the conversation. So dial 949-6990, or you can WhatsApp us at 925-3261. Back with more Talk Today following this very brief disclaimer.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Live Communication.
Let your voice be heard.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. In case you're just tuning in, I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, and very pleased to have in studio with me Miss April Cummings from Radio Cayman and Mr. Ralph Lewis from the Caymanian Times. Happy New Year. Welcome to Talk Today.
Well, good afternoon, Raymond. Thanks for having me. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
And same to you, and good to be here as well.
Yeah. You know, it's exciting to have... One, it's exciting to have April in the studio, right? Like, we sit in the same building together.
The whole
we don't
time.
sit in here.
No, I'm even now looking at my phone going, what am I missing? What am I missing?
gotta
What do
get
I need to do?
stuff to do.
What's going on? Yeah.
And we'll have Andrel from the Compass Media and Miss Wendy from Cayman News Service joining us in a bit. I was joking around before the show, but in all fairness, one of the fun moments, one of the reasons I wanted to have this show is the media is always the one asking the questions, whether it's from government, whether it's from people in the streets, whatever it might be. You're always the one that are, poking the bear. This time, you're the bear. And I get to kind of like poke those questions out there and put you in the hot spot, right? So the first question, and the hardest one for most people, is New Year's resolutions. Mr. Lewis, do you have any New Year's resolutions this year? Right off the bat, it's like, oh man, what did I sign up for?
No, I'm good. I do have a few.
Anything you're comfortable sharing, or any tidbits on how you're planning to make this year work for you?
Well, I like to describe it this way. There are different categories.
Okay.
The personal, the financial, the health, and so on. And so there I break it out.
Right.
And so I can share some details on some of the categories, but not all of them.
I completely understood. And if whatever you're comfortable with, within your comfort zone.
Of course, I want to save some money this year.
Sure.
And a couple $1,000s extra. Yeah. And of course, I want to expand my platform.
Yeah.
My news platform. And the other one is I want to lose some weight, When you get over 60, you tend to put on some weight above your stomach.
Is it 60? That's when it happens. Over 60.
Over 60.
All right. Sorry about that.
I'm past that.
So about over 50.
I was going to say, because I know some over 40s over here going.
What's he talking about? If only it took that long for the rest of us.
I know. So I'm trying to lose some of that weight.
Oh, fair enough. Are you one of those individuals that are like very compartmentalized, like you have this gridded out, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to make this happen? Or do you just kind of go with the flow?
No, I use my notebook on my phone and I have it written down, yes.
So you are that type A organized individual?
That's me.
I love it. Oh, coming for you next, Miss April.
2024, I aspire to be type A like Ralph and Raymond Singh, but am not. However, I have notepads, devices, and phones, but clearly I never met someone else's problem that wasn't more interesting than my own. So it's always a new day, a new thing.
You look the part. That's half the battle. It's like going to the gym. You got to get the right clothes. Has the organizer, has the pad.
I have the things.
Everything is lined up.
2024 is about using the things. No, I mean, it depends on whether we're talking personally or professionally. I love, January 1st is my favorite day because I just love the idea of a fresh start. It's a new project. Everyone's like, lifestyle changes. I'm like, nope, it's a new 30, 60, 90-day project.
Yeah.
I've learned that is, for me, the most fun, whether it is losing weight or whether it is trying to increase the amount of exercise or sleep in my case. But a lot of it is really an opportunity to explore what you want to do next. So I love the idea of let's reflect on the year behind. Let's look to the year ahead. Some of them are work goals, be more organized. The beauty of broadcast media is that it's now. Right now. But then you sometimes fail on the part where it comes to long-term planning or, consistent follow-ups. So one of my resolutions is just because you did the story today and tomorrow morning doesn't mean you don't have a note to go back and dig a little deeper for the follow-ups or the sidebar stories, as we used to call them. I don't know what they call them anymore, where it's not just here's what happened, but how did this affect people 3 months from now or 6 months from now? So one of my resolutions actually is to not out of sight, out of mind it when it comes to news.
I like that.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes, 360 something days from now. But
that's just it, right? It's that building that habit that's going to stick.
Exactly.
Mine is actually, you go through a project, whatever it might be, you're writing a story and there's whatever loose end. Whether it's you saved the picture in a folder and you just didn't save it properly and organize the folder, those little tiny loose ends on every little thing you do, my goal is to minimize how many, because those things pile up. And next thing you know, your desktop is flooded with all these things. You're like, what is this story
because
from like 6 months?
They weren't complete.
They weren't complete, right? So it's like a loose end that just kind of sat out there. And those loose ends just like they pull and they tug on you and they sit in your brain.
And in news, for example, so let's say I was starting to make a list of all the emergency contacts for hurricane season.
Yeah, sure.
So I've started this list and I've got maybe, half a dozen of the people's, because you can't, it's not just their work numbers you need to be able to really find them in these situations. And so, there's that shortcut on the desktop with the incomplete list of numbers. And then the day of the hurricane, there I am going through 3,000 different things trying to find someone whose number I have.
But it's the truth. It's that those little extra, those desktop shortcuts. They sound so good. And when you're first doing it, you have that problem where you actually...
No, my desktop is, you fill it with them.
Yeah.
And I forget sometimes.
Yeah. So we're going to do desktop 0, inbox 0.
All right. I'm making a note, and I will after this show. This is how I order myself. Day 360, I'm messaging both of you going, okay, how's that desktop looking, right? Let's see who has the messier desktop.
I'm going to just clean my desktop. There's nothing on it.
You're just wiping it, clean slate. Whatever was important, it's not anymore. Bank statements.
Delete.
But I think it's important, and this is both from a journalism, news, media perspective, as well as a personal perspective, to take some time to reflect on what we did well, what we didn't do well, the kinds of things that happen we weren't prepared for, because you can't plan everything. No. News people tend to have to react very quickly, and we don't always do it well.
No, you leave a trail behind because you're rushing.
I used to say, my hair's on fire. But then you need to take a moment sometimes and say, if something of this type occurs again, what questions should we ask this time that we didn't last time? What follow-up should occur?
Absolutely.
Is there some feedback we actually need to provide as media entities that we haven't? Not everything we do is going to be on the air, in print, in a blog.
No.
Sometimes it's literally going back to a newsmaker and saying, I know you may not want to hear this from us, but it would be better if in this instance, this, and this occurred. Because what's happening sometimes, I think, is information is not getting out with a degree of clarity that listeners or viewers need. It takes time to dig past the surface of a press release.
Yes.
And so sometimes I think that gap needs to be much smaller so that it doesn't take 3 weeks for someone to get the questions answered from, it was a very nice press release, but if I can't explain it to you in regular terms, then a lot of people aren't going to understand really what you're trying to achieve or what information you're trying to get out. No, so there is the part of journalism that's about, what's wrong with this, where are the holes, but there is also the part that's about public education and information, and I think that's a critical component. I'm not an expert on many, many things. Okay, very little things, very few things. But I need to be able to have access to the experts so that I can translate this into a way that's easy for everyone to understand.
Right. Well, my role is different to April's, and I run our organization, so I have a number of people working for me. And those little folders that I have on my desktop, they get cleaned up regularly. But the way I deal with it is that I have to find the time when I'm not distracted. And
how do you do that as an entrepreneur in media?
I wake up at 4 o'clock.
So I'm with you. Okay. So I get it.
I got a newscast at 6. It's not happening here.
You got to beat the chickens, right?
I wake up at 4 because one of my writers are in the UK. So I wake up at 4 in the morning. You start to go to those little folders and you clean them out, and those little instructions you started, and then you started to create your list of tools and so on at that time of day. So by 6 o'clock, I'm a little tired, so I go back to bed for another hour. Then I get up and I'm ready. But those 2 hours in the morning when it's very quiet and no distractions, and the phone doesn't ring, there's no WhatsApp, there's nothing happening, that's when I get to do all those things. And I get to talk to my guys overseas as well. So
there's quite a common thread for that level of entrepreneurship that gets up early.
That early morning.
And because you need that time. You need the fewer distractions because everything's a firestorm when you're a business owner.
Yep.
Yeah. Everything can burn down your business at some point.
Everything's a firestorm, right?
And especially media.
Yeah, so it's finding time to manage versus time to be the editorial director versus sales versus all the things. There's something that Ralph has it's a difficult balance to strike, I think.
It's a constant juggling act, right?
You have to be very good at organizational skills.
Sure.
Your time management has to be bang on. That's why when I come to a meeting, I have to be there right on time. If I'm going to leave at 2, I'm going to leave at 2 because I have something waiting at 2:05.
Absolutely.
And so you have to manage your time very well, and otherwise it's not going to happen.
I hear you.
So time management is so key, and organization.
On this time management, I'm going to get the mean look in a second if I don't go to commercial break. So on that note, let's go to our 12:30 commercial break. Back to more talk today right after this.
Jingle all the way into the season of incredible savings and wish granting with Digicel. This Christmas, get 25% off your Prime Bundle plan or postpaid bill for the next 6 months. With plans featuring social data, entertainment data, and more, Digicel keeps you connected and entertained all season long. But here's the real magic. Digicel could make your Christmas wish come true. Win a prize of your choice, from getting your rent paid to a new laptop or even a brand new car. Visit a Digicel store today, where dreams come true this holiday season.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Get ready to laugh till your belly hurts. The Laughter Lounge Comedy Show is back at Cabana Bay Cinema on Friday, January 5th. Doors swing open at 9 p.m. and the laughs kick off at 9:30 p.m. We've got comedians from Miami, Chicago, and Atlanta, including the hilarious Valerie Salnave, Sacco from the Windy City, and the fabulous Vanessa Fraction. Brought to you by Laugh Cayman and sponsored by the Department of Tourism and Cayman Islands Little League. Tickets and info at laughcayman.com or call 326-4510. Don't miss the funniest night of the year.
You don't sound too good there, Bobo.
Yeah, you know how it is. With the kids back in school, every other week they coming out with something, and then I catch it.
Sound like it catch you. But for real, brother, flu season is here, and COVID is still around. You gotta stock up on things like medicine, vitamins, and minerals for you and the kids. You know what they say, prevention is better than cure.
At ValueMed, our pharmacists can help manage flu symptoms and provide guidance on vitamins and minerals to best support you and your family's overall health. Visit ValueMed Pharmacy on Walkers Road or Town, or WhatsApp your questions and prescription refills to ValueMed on Walkers Road at 926-1662 or WhatsApp ValueMed in Town at 916-5511. Live happy, live healthy with ValueMed Pharmacy.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Caymans Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, who will be back in the studio on Monday. Day 4 of the year, we have a fun roundtable chat today lined up. In studio right now, we have from Radio Cayman, Miss April Cummings, from Caymanian Times, Mr. Ralph Lewis, and then joining us in due course, Mr. Andrel Harris from Compass Media and Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service. Now you've got some of the warmth out of the way and everyone's kind of, ready to go on the show. One of the areas we wanted to chat about today was 2023. While we're always going to look ahead, last year, like every year, was a big year. Some big stories that kind of took the headlines. From your perspective in media, was there anything that really stuck out for you? Top 2 or 3 stories from 2023? Ralph?
Well, what we've tried to do at Caymanian Times is to sort of give an overview of what happens in the region, in the world, as well as local news.
Sure.
Because we do believe that what happens around the world is affecting us at some point.
That's absolutely.
And so, of course, we had the King's coronation. Cayman is very close to the UK. We're a territory. And I know from my experience that we really appreciate that bond. And, it's something that people look forward to. And, King Charles finally made it to his coronation after 70 years.
Absolutely.
And so that was something really, really big.
The change of a monarch is usually a big story. It's been a big deal throughout history. So, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm still periodically struggling with saying it correctly because my whole life it was Her Majesty the Queen. And so I sometimes will listen because one of the things I do is I try to go back and listen to our different newscasts, and I will just cringe when I hear myself say the wrong one, because for my entire life since I was a little kid, it's Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
It's the truth. It
was a huge change.
Imagine being Ralph, you're in your 60s. Imagine being in your 60s. Your entire 6 decades, you have been using one term, and then
absolutely.
Like we struggle changing from year to year. We still write 2023, right?
Yeah, imagine that.
It's March, and we're still writing 2023.
I know, on those checks.
Still true. I suppose from my perspective, and remember I tend to focus on what just happened as opposed to what happened 12 months ago.
Yeah.
That is a challenge for me. But I really do think the change in government is one of the big stories of the year. And this is not coming for me from a point of, criticism or yay or woe is us. It was really just very watching it all play out over the course of the year and seeing how things concluded. It was a really interesting study in politics in the Cayman Islands.
It was.
One man, one vote was something, and I'm saying this not as a journalist, but as a human. I thought the concept of one man, one vote was fascinating. It sounded like democracy at its best. But then over the years that followed, you realize, wow, this actually does have a fundamental impact on how things work. So I think that from that point forward, everything we're seeing seems to actually connect back to that change. Not that there haven't been shifts in governments before, or that people haven't, dealt with no confident votes one way or the other, but I just found it really interesting to see the impact and the changes and just sort of how things played out.
It's a big one. You talk about the change of monarch, change of government. Those are two giants. The change in government one was an interesting one because it happened, I don't want to say seamlessly, because I'm sure there's still, bumps along the way they're still kind of smooth out. But when we talk about a change in government, we came to work on a Friday, left work on a Friday, came to work on a Monday, and with an entirely new government in place, right? There's something very seamless about going through that when you're talking about a jurisdiction that has so many moving parts to it.
Also, remember, Ray, you and I are civil servants.
Yes.
And have been so for a while. And I made up a term that I don't know if it's actually true, but I always call it the civil service flu. Around election points, so you have some people who are just incredibly dedicated to their jobs, and they've got a groove going on, and they know who they're working for, and everything's straight. And then the election season rolls around, and people are like, okay, this was my, okay, I got to get ready. Things are going to shift. Yes. It would be everything from email addresses to, wait, who's in charge of what again?
Ministry changes
it's a lot of change. And this one happened over the course of a weekend. So I actually found it a very interesting example of something that when I was in private sector, I don't think I understood or appreciated, which is the ability of civil servants to rebound and, okay, we were going here, now we're going here. Yeah. Let's figure out how we're going to get it done. I found that really interesting. And especially on this side, when I looked at it from the outside, I didn't get the emotional components of this. Sure. It actually does affect people, their mood, their ability, their stress, So it was like, wow, this is interesting.
Depending
but this was such a short window that I didn't observe it for as long a period.
Sure. And it's very recent. It's a very fresh one. Anyway, thank you. And Wendy, welcome to Talk Today.
Thanks, everyone.
So
Hi.
we have to get you caught up to
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So now for listeners tuning in by radio, we now have Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service. So I got to put you in the hot spot. So one of the things we open the show with is usually you're the ones that are always firing off the hot questions and, keeping everyone on their toes, poking the bear. This time, you're the bear that I get to kind of go, oh, so what's going on now? So the first one was New Year's resolutions. We got to take a step back. Any New Year's resolutions, Wendy?
I'm not a big New Year's resolution person.
Which is the opposite of what I said, by the way. I love them so much.
I don't really make them. I think it's a kind of it's a juncture in a calendar. I don't have any strong feelings about it. It's just the same day. I think when you're in journalism as well, you tend to be. I mean, over the years, you work in so many different places under so many different kind of cultures and situations that counting the days it becomes irrelevant.
I'm still counting them, Wendy. I got to count something.
So I might take notice of the holidays here a little more than I used to do in the past, because this is kind of Cayman's great for like having downtime at Christmas, because otherwise I would never get any. So it is my kind of. So I do notice it more, but I'm more. It's kind of Wendy time. It's like I've only just really sort of started to come back to work. So.
Fair enough.
I thought it would be a good idea to come on the show and find out what I'm supposed to be writing about this year. So it's going to be a media roundtable for 2024.
This is your research.
What should I be writing about?
All right, you get this story, I get this story. I love it. All right, so thank you. So no resolutions. It's just
resolutions.
Off to the races. Christmas came.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just like some sleeping went on. Ooh. Some relaxing, and now it's about what are we focusing on this year? And I mean, certainly for me, it's going to be even more focused on environmental issues. I think this year I will be focusing very heavily on that kind of area. For me, it's. I think I know the cost of living and I know the economy. I know all those things everybody thinks those are important, and the politics. And obviously next year we'll be talking much more about the election. But I think for this year, the importance of the environment and green issues cannot be underestimated. We are facing an existential crisis, and we've just lost the only politician that cared. So in terms of being on the front bench of government, so we who's going to be the champion for it on the front bench now? No one. So I think it's got to be the press.
Interesting.
You jumped ahead of me, but it's very, very powerful indeed. Can we take a step back to 2023 for a second? So before you walked in, we were actually discussing top stories that you found for 2023. Ralph discussed the exchange of the monarch and the king's coronation. April brought up the change of government back in November, December. Somewhere in that window.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, 5 minutes ago. Was there any kind of moments for you last year that we stuck out?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of moments, but none of them particularly good. I think I think Cayman learned a lesson that, to be fair, Sir Alden McLaughlin has been trying to teach them for years that party politics is better than not party politics. And I think we learned that. It doesn't matter whether you like them as a party or not. The point is they laid out their stall. Now, people have voted against that stall for sure. But what they couldn't do was vote for a cohesive agenda on the other side. Because now you tell me, when I go to vote next April, I think it's going to be, isn't it? This time, because they always go the fault. Nobody's going to give up on that month, are they? Nobody's going to say, "Oh yes, I'll." Yeah,
let's do this earlier.
Let's do this. So it'll be in April. Who do I vote for as somebody who cares more than anything about anything else other than the environment and stop, doing something about our uncontrolled and ridiculous development? So who do I vote for? I mean, there isn't a slate of electors that I can say.
She could vote for an individual, perhaps, if there's one running
in my constituency
district, which goes back to the one man, one vote.
But it wouldn't matter who that was. You see, for me, if I knew there was a green candidate, I wouldn't care who they were as an individual because they were representing a particular agenda.
That was most important to you.
To me, independent candidates represent anything. They can say whatever they like because they cannot deliver on a single thing that they say, and that was proven. And that's what we've seen
if there were
over the last 2 years.
Green, let's say, party, there is a
An
greater
expectation,
an opportunity, at least, that they might be able to take the seats of power and affect change.
Yeah.
So whether I'm for or against the environment, or for as much as Wendy.
That's like being against kittens.
I know, right?
Being against the environment.
Wait a minute. Kittens in the wild, not good for the environment, I'm told. But that said, regardless, the concept kind of goes back to what I was saying before, like the repercussions of one man, one vote.
Yeah.
It changed a lot of things for us.
It's interesting on that party politics one. I would actually mind jumping to that, but we do have a commercial break. And then, Ralph, I want to hear your thoughts on party politics. And then I just want to go back to your comment about Sir Alden McLaughlin and the proven party politics versus independence, because with a lot of younger voters coming up in the next election, this is stuff they need to actually be aware of, right? Back to more talk today, right after this.
Discover your dream home with Cayman National's home loan. Get up to 95% financing, repayment up to 40 years, and just a 0.5% commitment fee. Your interest rate? Depending on your risk factors, it'll be fixed or variable. Plus, you get a pre-approved credit card. This is a limited time offer. Dial 949-8300 or email lending@caymanational.com today.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Jingle all the way into the season of incredible savings and wish granting with Digicel. This Christmas, get 25% off your Prime Bundle plan or postpaid bill for the next 6 months. With plans featuring social data, entertainment data, and more, Digicel keeps you connected and entertained all season long. But here's the real magic. Digicel could make your Christmas wish come true. Win a prize of your choice, from getting your rent paid to a new laptop or even a brand new car. Visit a Digicel store today, where dreams come true this holiday season.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. Pleased to have in studio, in case you're just tuning in, Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service, Ralph Lewis from Caymanian Times, and April Cummings from Radio Cayman. Here with the Media Roundtable, just kind of chewing down right now the top stories from 2023. And one of the topics that came up during the conversation was the party politics conversation. Independence versus party politics. Pros and cons to both sides, but a valid argument just made of that independence, while they might have some strong opinions, some opinions you might value, when it comes to actually making whatever changes that might happen, you need buying power from other MPs. Ralph, thoughts on party politics, independence?
Well, I remember when the emphasis was on moving away from a party towards independence, and it was tried over a number of years, but it's clear that it didn't work. We may have different reasons why it didn't work, but there has been a collective agreement, and there has been some manifesto in the beginning, and that can guide your direction in actions. And I think that's what's missing with independence. And so without that, you're going to have some challenges. Now, we could talk about the parties and what the benefits and what the challenges that come with parties, because there's some challenges with parties.
There's some significant challenges that come with parties as well, right?
If you look at the U.S., there's two parties fighting over each other.
And with such polarizing views, it actually polarizes the country in the process.
Yes, that's right. And so therefore, there's some challenges that comes with both these options. But I think the best option for right now is to have a party that has a manifesto and a direction that the people can vote for, or the majority can vote for. Now, Wendy brought up a good topic of environment, and that's one thing that we want to champion as well this year. We want to save 7 Mile Beach, and of course, we want to do. Of course, there has to be a balancing act, always for employment and the economy, and so therefore, how do we balance those things? And so the government has to look at those both sides of the coin, and say, how do we balance development against caring for the environment? And these are the kind of points that have to be discussed and voted on. But no one's taking those challenges and championing them. And that's the concerns I have. But regarding, to answer your question, yes, I think that the party, for me right now, is the better way to go.
It's better to go right now.
At this point.
April?
I mean, I'm a little Pollyanna sometimes. I believe it is possible for independence with consistent work to perform as a party successfully. I think it is possible, but you have to have enough in common at the get-go to be able to do that, and you also have to set your parameters on what your deal breakers are before you guys, the group puts itself forward as this independent party. If you don't do that, you're going to see this back and forth. And look, some of that's normal, right? That's normal part of the process. There's always some horse trading. I may not love the idea of it, but that exists. That's how it works. You give me this, I give you that, blah, 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 so on and forth. But if you do not have enough in that space together and you're not consistently working on that, I don't mean, oh, look, we're meeting, we're going to hash it out. I mean, it's kind of like life coaching and business coaching. You've got to have time set aside to continue to work on finding your common grounds and sorting your stuff out, aside from dealing with the actual work of the day. Problem with that is it's time consuming. And therefore, something else is going to fall out of the way. You've got to deal with your constituents and their problems. You've got to deal with the country's problems, your ministry's issues. You've got to deal with all of that. And if you're not already in a party, already on the same page, you're going to have to spend extra time trying to stay on the same page with this group of people that you have come together with. So the party seems like it could be a more efficient way. But if I don't like what the party represents as a voter, then I've got a problem. So you would need enough parties that satisfy the different needs of the greater good, if you will.
I think it's an important development that Cayman needs though, because I think historically there's a lot of reasons why party politics didn't seem that important, why it was always about personalities rather than parties.
We're a small town.
Was because it's a small town, and also because it was previously, and it still is really a colony, so it's kind of, the governor used to make policy, and so therefore the politicians weren't really policy makers, and it was the technocrats that drew things up. And also everybody was kind of on the same page. Tourism and financial services, we just do what we can. But now we have issues in our country that are dividing us. So we're already divided when people start talking about politics and it being divisive. People in America are already divided. They didn't need Donald Trump to come along and just expose it, but they were already very well divided. So what you have to decide is when you have an obvious conflict. And our obvious conflict now exists because you said we want to save 7 Mile Beach. Well, if we want to save 7 Mile Beach, we want those hotels to retreat, Ralph. But you're also saying, but the economy. Well, no. The economy's had it for the last 50 years. What hasn't had it is the air that we breathe. And the trees, they haven't had it. There's been no balance. So now we need to swing that pendulum back the other way, and people don't like it. But we have got to be much more drastic about curtailing the type of development that we've allowed if we want Cayman to even exist 50 years from now. You want your grandkids to go swimming to go to 7 Mile Beach and swim in the ocean and see some fish. We've got to do this.
We had a conversation yesterday. Actually, over the past 2 weeks, we've had a couple comments that were made regarding development. One caller last week, and the comment was in regards to the economic side of this conversation, being a grandparent and a parent himself, and looking at it from he's got to put food on his kid's table. So focusing on the environment might sound great in principle, but in the actual practice of raising families, school fees, whatever it might be, the economy is such a ever-present force that he's got to deal with on a regular basis. We had Matt Brown in the studio yesterday as well, and he's a realtor. And I asked him the question about his kids, because he grew up in this community having a yard. He said the reality is I don't foresee my kids growing up anywhere like the lifestyle I had, and that's just the reality I've accepted, that we are on limited space. We're going to have to build up eventually. That means the concrete jungle is a reality one day. It may not be 10 years from now, but that one day was in 20 years. My kids might not have that.
But the reality is there will be nowhere for that concrete jungle to go. We're a low-lying island. The sea level rise is coming. So if sure, of course, people want to but there are other ways of making money. We don't have to make money through the sale of land to foreign owners that have no vested interest in saving 7 Mile Beach, except for their own short-term desires or to put their sun lounger on it.
So interestingly enough, that is what I was thinking I was saying it's not in those words, but I've heard several times discussions about taking a look at how we make our living here, how we grow, what things we do. But I still do not have a clear understanding of what it would take besides for the things that we've already been doing that would sustain the local economy, right? What are those things? What are those other jobs? They exist, of course they do. I'm saying that sort of exercise, I hear a bit of rhetoric out, but I don't see the work that says, let's say we don't want to develop anymore and we don't want to do this and we don't want to do that. So what are we going to do instead? Yeah. I'm interested in
the instead.
What is the instead? What does it look like?
And no one wants to talk about the instead because it means doing something slightly differently. And I think
change is painful.
Yeah. And the thing is, we actually have a blueprint. I mean, I've only been here just 20 years, so
That's
I can't.
It?
Yeah,
seems so long.
I know, it feels like 100 times.
No, I've known Wendy since she got here.
Yeah, so it's only 20 years, and I think in that time, and when I talk to, I mean, obviously, I have a very wide circle of local friends, and so, I understand and I know that when I listen to my partner talk about him growing up as a kid here, it's really different to my life in a coal mining village in Yorkshire. And I was supposed to be from the big economy, do you know? But no, way better life, way better,
So we have had a quality of life here.
Much better quality
of life. That we take for granted. Yeah, absolutely correct. And actually expect more of. And I'm not sure we're wrong to want more,
Whereas I think people would say that today, their quality of life, most Caymanians I speak to today say their quality of life is nowhere near as good as it was 30, 40 years ago.
Agreed, but we have an increased emphasis on material possessions.
Yeah.
I love them myself. It's shiny. It's new. I want that.
And
this was not a free phone.
That's why we're in an existential environmental crisis.
So that's why it's a crisis.
It is the constant acquisition of stuff and the desire for stuff. The system that we live under has made us do it because we have been bombarded with. Because if you're not consuming, then you're not adding to economic growth. And we have come into a situation. We can't do capitalism any other way other than constant growth. And constant growth is what will kill us.
And that was always my question.
Because it won't kill the planet, it'll kill us.
Because the sentiment was you grow or die.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, is there a different way?
I think
don't
there
have
is.
this answer, by the way.
So, Ralph, as a business owner, because you're actually in a different seat than three of us here, as a business owner yourself, like the grow or die mentality, capitalism, and the environment, a lot of balancing acts in there.
Wait, Wendy's a business owner too.
Yeah,
I'm a
sorry.
business
Yes,
owner.
sorry.
We've never done grow or die. We've just gone just plod along.
What do
and
we
we've
need
done
to survive?
fine. You know, it's how you do it. It's what you want out of what you're doing.
Sure.
And if the dollar is the only thing if the dollar was the only thing that mattered, CNS would have gone a long time ago. The reason why it hasn't is because I don't have that same material desire. I don't always need to be striving.
You
for
don't
more.
always need more.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
whereas
we
Ralph and
live
I,
in,
no, I'm joking.
we live in it, as I say, we live in a great place.
We do.
Our quality of life is already way better than many people.
It is.
So I know you're going to chat with Ralph. I need to apologize because I have a doctor's appointment. This is the best conversation, but I will return if I can.
Thank you. I do want you back in because this is actually getting it's vibrant. It's energy. Ralph, really quickly, 1 minute because I got to get the 1 p.m. news.
It might take longer than 1 minute, but I think
we'll come back to that after
the horse has already left the stable. Where we are today with an economy was created from a number of things. One thing that has resulted is the high cost of living. And for us to deal with that, we have to look at a number of industries. How are we going to create this economy? How are we going to allow people to have a standard of living that can pay their expenses? And that's one of the challenges we have. And to hold back on things such as development without considering where we are today and what we need to survive and to continue to grow and maintain the standard of living that we have, we will be in a serious situation. You just can't stop development at this stage, and that's a challenge that we have facing us.
I want to come back to you when we come back from the break just to pick back up on that, and then I'll want to hear your feedback on that as well. Back with more Talk Today right after our 1 p.m. headline news.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's read the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Information to the people. From Radio Cayman's newsroom, this is Headlines. Local, regional, international news.
Brought to you by Health Services Authority.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Anti-Money Laundering Services Synergy Solutions announces the appointment of Sandra Eden-Walter as Director of Synergy AML Services. Ms. Eden-Walter will lead the charge in enhancing the company's compliance capabilities and bringing industry-leading AML solutions to clients. In international news, the UK's Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton are among high-profile figures named in U.S. court papers detailing connections of late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The newly released records form part of a case against Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's girlfriend who has been jailed for helping him abuse girls. But the documents so far unveil no major new allegations about Epstein nor revelations about his associates. Prince Andrew is accused of groping a woman, which he denies. Other names in the documents include singer Michael Jackson and magician David Copperfield, though no wrongdoing is alleged. Britney Spears has said she will never return to the music industry after rumors she was planning a return to the studio surfaced last week. The pop star was responding to claims in the U.S. media that she was lining up songwriters for a 10th studio album. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
More news available at www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Check out our social media pages: Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter. Radio Cayman Headline News.
Brought to you by Health Services Authority.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands. Captain Keith Parker Tibbetts, MBE, JP. Following a successful and decorated shipping and military career, Captain Keith Parker Tibbetts, MBE, JP, returned back to Cayman Brac. In 1953, an enterprising Captain Keith began a small retail grocery business in Watering Place. The entrepreneurial spirit he developed 20 years prior while working in the family-owned soft drink factory at Cotton Tree Bay would shine through, turning the grocery business into Tib Mart Supermarket in 1974, introducing gift stamps for purchases and pioneering self-service shopping in Cayman Brac. Keith Tibbetts was fond of saying, "They stocked everything to take you from the cradle to the grave." Captain Keith's entrepreneurial efforts stretched far, and he began landing cars by pontoons in 1955. He also owned and operated the island's first rock crusher and started commercial farming on the bluff. He then opened a gas station in 1955, served as Cayman Airways agent until 1980, and in 1975 was appointed agent with Red Carpet Airlines, part owned by his brother, Linton. He also operated a sub-post office, taught local men carpentry, built 12 houses, and sold them to young seamen, assembled a steel staircase, and built the platform for the stratoscopic antenna for cable and wireless at Stake Bay, worked as an agent for Morton General Insurance Company, operated Skipper's Lodge Guest House, Kesson Rent-A-Car, served as an agent for Thompson Shipping Company, and owned and operated a gift shop at the Brac Reef Hotel. This was part 6 of a special Sister Islands vignette series dedicated to Captain Keith Parker Tibbetts.
I'll be back. I've got 22 more days.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. Pleased to have in studio from Cayman News Service, Miss Wendy Leisure, and from the Caymanian Times, Mr. Ralph Lewis. And this is our friendly media roundtable talking about, so often we hear the politicians discussing what they want to have discussed. We hear the private sector discussing what they want to discuss, and this was an opportunity for the media houses to discuss what they thought were, pressing issues and the state of the media landscape. So before the break, in case you're just tuning in, we touched upon and it's going to broaden, the conversation is going to broaden, but development versus environment and where that balance is. Wendy, very pro on the environment side. Ralph, you had mentioned the horse leaving the gate and that the development, the cost of living, the way of life that Caymanians this community has been used to for the better part of 4 decades. When we started seeing the change in development, change in electricity, the wider spread use of communications, Radio Cayman being involved in the community, connecting everybody, that horse has left that gate, was your comment before the break. How do you feel that plays into 20 years from now? We start talking about Wendy's comments on the balance of environment or the need for more environmental focus.
And to answer that question, I would like to step back a bit. I came here in 1982. Okay, and that's quite a while ago. and there was no unemployment. You came out of school, and you got a job in a bank paying you $3,000 a month. That was good salary.
Yeah.
And so the banking industry was really booming at that point. That's why I came here too. And, and so that was how things were done. We had a great standard of living. The salary was high. And of course, with a high salary or high compensation, you get high prices. And that's one of the reasons why Cayman was overpriced, I believe, in those days. Now, one thing we learned is that prices do not go down. They keep going up. And
unfortunately.
And salaries were increasing. It's hard to reduce salaries. But in some industries, they just keep increasing. So we have an expectation for a certain standard of living that existed over the years. And how do we maintain that? How can you tell your son that he can't drive a car valued at $30,000 when that's what is going now? Is he going to get a scooter? That will not happen. He needs to have an income from a job that will pay him a certain amount of salary to maintain a standard of living. He has his degree and everything. Now that money has come from someplace, and the industries that have developed over the years are now feeding into that model. Now, of course, like what Wendy said, what has suffered with the price is things like the economy. The environment, yes. Because of development, which have been part of that growth. And that's what I'm saying. The horse already left the gate. How do we rein it in now? It's going to be very difficult.
We have to, though, because part of these problems are a lot to do with development and waste, overconsumption. You know, the amount of stuff that we throw away and waste. The fact that we just seem addicted to development in that it doesn't matter what it is, it gets rubber stamped, off it goes, it doesn't matter how close. Again, yesterday the CPA was hearing applications where people wanting that waterfront setback cut in half. You know, build in the sea, why not? You know, I mean, it's getting ridiculous. And these developments that are causing us to lose 7 Mile Beach, because you say you want to save 7 Mile Beach, Ralph, and I'm going to hold you to that this year. I'll be asking you about stories.
I'm serious. I'm serious.
Because if you want to save 7 Mile Beach, then you've got to stop building on it. End of story. But we're not. We still haven't done the line in the sand. Wayne spoke about a line in the sand, a proper line, in the first year of office, but there's no sign of it. And now the climate policy was not put before cabinet. It was ready to go. Cool. Do we think we're going to see the climate policy this year? That's another thing. I don't know. Be an interesting one to watch out for the headlines on CNS. Where's the climate policy?
That's the headline of CNS.
That's right. But this balance is very difficult, and we have got. I'm sorry, but the $30,000 car. I mean, hundreds and millions of people around the world cannot afford a $30,000 car. Why should it be a right? What's wrong with a scooter?
All right. Okay. So I'm gonna pause that one right there. We now have a studio from Campus Media. One of our former Radio Cayman staffers, Mr. Andrel Harris, affectionately dubbed Muscular Medium. How are you, good sir? Welcome back to the studio. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Haven't seen you in a couple of years.
Well, thank you to the listeners of Radio Cayman. My profound apologies. Work news never stops.
Doesn't.
And I was busy knocking out a couple stories when my editor came over and was just like, Andrel, why are you still here? Shouldn't you be on Radio Cayman? And so... my apologies for being late. I don't know how far we've gone.
Well, we've covered quite a bit of stories. So we talked about New Year's resolutions. We'll skip that one for you.
Yeah.
We were talking about some of the highlight stories from 2023 to kickstart the conversation. Mm-hmm. Ralph had mentioned the King's coronation being a major story that came out of last year. April, who was in the studio a little while ago, brought up the change in government. Another big one for us locally here in Cayman, more specific to Cayman.
Yeah.
Wendy discussed and a segue part of that conversation was perhaps this is now why we're seeing the benefits of party politics. Because of that change in government, there might be more merit to party politics being the focus. And then we kind of segued into Plan Cayman, the environment, cost of living, economy, and the mushroom just kind of exploded from there. And then you walked in the door.
And there I go.
And there you go, you came in. So we talked about the cost of living and environment. Where do you sit yourself as you personally, and then I don't want to speak for your whole media house, but you personally on this topic of the environment and economy and where that balance is?
Okay. Well, I'm never really one who gives my own personal opinions on matters, but as close as I could possibly come is I believe there needs to be a realistic approach, and that simply isn't pandering to any one side. That is not to the environmentalists nor to the industrialists who might want to see the country developed. I think, quite frankly, we'll have to find a way for development to be sustainable. And that is in the absence of several crucial and key factors. I mean, take away the people of Cayman, and then what you have is a barren island with no resources. The people of Cayman are its greatest resources, and dare I say, its only real resources. And so, as far as we're concerned, or as far as I see it, we must develop the country in a manner that allows for the people of Cayman to be able to participate in its wealth and development, but also to contribute and to put forward plans and policies for the future generation, the next batch of our resources. So to that extent, I think we have to be realistic and understand that there must be a balance. We surely shouldn't be building in the sea. But then again, where will the next generation of Caymanians live? They too will need a home. Are they to stay in their parents' home and then have that become a multi-generational home? Or are they to also go out and find their plot of land and make home and make a homestead? Or do we rethink the way land is allocated and is used, or the resources? So as far as my mind is on that is, quite frankly, there must be a sustainable way to develop. As far as I'm concerned, the notion of limiting, let me not speak out of turn there, but we must find a way to ensure that development is sustainable. And that's the simple be all and end all. I think the area that needs the greatest focus in that is the proper oversight and regulatory body or bodies. Until they're working in unison, and until
like CPA,
NCCA, planning department, cabinet, which has special powers to approve some of these buildings and structures, until we have a unified voice and a unified understanding, we're going to find ourselves constantly rowing and pulling in different directions. And I think that's part of the reason why we have some of these complexes that are slipping in, that violate some of what, the wishes and demands of the people are. And then there are others that people are saying, this is something that we need, that should be built, but we can't get, whether it be a sporting facility or something of the sort, So until we have a unified voice where that is concerned, I fear we'll forever be in that circle, constantly going back and forth. But as far as the compass is concerned, the compass put out 10 key issues. We recently published an article and will feature very heavily in tomorrow's publication on the 10 main issues that the compass sees as sticking points, some of which are pretty old, that have been dragging on from administration to administration year through year. And then there are some new challenges on the horizons as well that the compass believes we need to put proper forethought into before we find ourselves in a different quagmire, so to speak.
Where was the environment on that list of top 10? Was it like
quite heavy.
Okay.
Quite heavy.
Okay.
I not to misplace it, but it's really high up on the list.
Was sustainable development in that conversation, or was that a separate line item for you guys in that top 10?
No. This all one in essence was the focus of it. And the compass for me, last year it was the people stories. It was the story of the people that stood out the most to me. Whether it be the cost of so the compass is focused quite recently. James Whitaker has done an amazing job of going out in the community and speaking with people and shining the light on some of the issues and problems that we face. And when I say we, I might not endure the same circumstances as these people, but we, the people of Cayman, face by and large. Whether that be, how cost of living impacts all of us. Sure. For some, it is they won't be able to put their child in a specific program this month, whether it be swimming lessons or piano lessons. And for others, it really means I won't have a roof, or I won't have food, or whatever the case might be. So it's the way that the stories have been told really helps to put a light on the implications of government policies. And so when you hear the ESO comes out and says, inflation rose X% this year, or the banks come out and say, we're going to be increasing our rates in line with the Feds. It's easy for that to go over people's heads because until you put a face to it, until you put a voice to it, until you shine the light and show what the actual ramifications of these policies and plans are, it doesn't hit home.
Very rarely does. I'm glad that's actually really important. Actually putting that face to because I read those ESO reports and you see those 0.5% increase, whatever it was, and I remember 2 years ago when this deep conversation started, there was no face to this. There was no real practical thing. This is what's actually going to happen. You're going to have 20 families losing their homes and completely indigent if we don't correct. And that wasn't part of that conversation. So I'm glad to hear that.
No.
So that was your story. I'll tell you my fun one because I have to break a little bit. But so because I sit in the seat that I don't have to write news, I don't have to live in the muck on a regular basis. It's a pleasure I enjoy. I sit and I can say I'm part of the media, but I'm not, and that I don't have to write the ugly stories. You do the heavy lifting. I get to come along and put little sprinkles on it, right? But the two stories that to me last year that stuck out was Cayman, being as small as we are, had 2 football players go professional, 1 male, 1 female. And I look at, for a community as small as Cayman is, who went through some very heavy football issues not that long ago, while these 2 players were growing up through the system, and to see them actually mature into now 2 pro athletes, that's huge. We're not a big jurisdiction. To have 2 come out, 1 male, 1 female, that was a big one. But then there's a whole bunch of other athletes who've done amazing stuff, from swimming, you name it. So we're punching pretty high above that weight belt, right? The other one was, and it was a fun story that I said, that's really cool. Mr. Arthur's in town put in a crosswalk. It sounds like such a novel. It's not a big deal. It's just, it's a crosswalk. Little Miss Maloney can walk across that street now, right? And if you know the history behind the tragedy of Mr. Arthur's, that crosswalk actually carries some heavy, heavy weight to it, right? And that little crosswalk I thought was one of the coolest stories of all of 2023. Good stories, not the heavy lifting stories that you all do. A lot of good stories, but I thought those 2 kind of stuck out.
I mean, funny enough, for me, I cover a bit of court, crime, politics, you name it, horrible stuff here.
Some heavy stuff, man.
And for me, one of the best stories that I enjoyed was 2 in particular, both of some infant children. A young mother, cancer-stricken mother with a baby that had a hole in his heart, Geez. But, and there's an update coming on that story. That was a beautiful story to tell. I mean, throughout that tragedy and realizing that had she not have to have her baby, have a premature baby, she wouldn't have discovered that she had pancreatic cancer, And so in all that tragedy, that was a blessing in disguise. And then most recently, I did a story about little Zoe Valkyrie, an 8-month-old who had to have a liver transplant.
That's right.
And I think I was writing the story when it clicked. I was just like, where does an 8-month-old get a liver transplant from? Certainly not an adult. And it can't be an artificial liver. And it settled in, the reality of
another baby
had to die. Are 2 of the stories that stood out the most to me. But yeah.
Powerful. Wendy, do you have any feel-good stories? We'll get back to the environment in a bit. I promise you, we're going to come back to the environment.
Yeah, I don't really. I'm not very good at feel-good stories. There must be something wrong with me. I just never
very good at feel-good stories.
It's never something I really sort of go down that road of, because 2 reasons. Largely, at the end of the day, news is, to me, is about the stuff that shouldn't happen. So the feel good. I mean, obviously that is news because it's about like when you have that again. That shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be a case of a baby needing a liver transplant. I mean, again, that's a shouldn't happen story. But largely, a lot of feel good stories are just life, and that's not news. You know, it's. I think news for me is about what the people in authority are doing to your lives, and basically exposing what should not be happening. So the whole why does plane land safely? Why is that not a headline? As we all go back to journalism school, you know, and the old dog bites man versus man bites dog. You know, why is one a headline and one not? Because it's like, you know, so at the end of the day, feel good stories are all well and good. And we had a website, Cayman News Service came up with, was the first news house in this jurisdiction to actually come up with an entire website dedicated to happiness and joy. And you know what? No one read it.
No, it's the truth.
No one read it, so we couldn't finance it. If no one read it, if there's no eyeballs on it, we can't get advertisers on it. If we can't get advertisers on it, you can't pay a journalist. So if you can't pay a journalist, there's no one to write it.
We
so
just stepped into the
a
capitalist
vicious circle of
Hold on. We just
what
stepped
it
into the
is.
capitalist conversation on that one.
Exactly.
I'm going to hold you to that one in a bit. All right. Is there anything good you felt government did then in 2023 as a feel-good story?
God, government doing good.
Give me one.
That's challenging.
All right,
No,
you think
I don't think so.
All right.
The climate policy, but they didn't take it any further.
All right, so
Public
steps,
consultations on things that are important to people. These are issues, but you know, nowhere near enough press briefings. I mean, we're still waiting. We've had a new government now for 2 months. No press conference. I have a stack of questions like that. And no one's going to answer them unless they're on the spot in front of the public. And that's why press conferences are really important. Yeah, you can do an interview, but, you know, sure. But there's going to be all that, you know, negotiation of, well, I'm not going to answer that question. Well, you're in a room and nobody saw them say that. So you need press conferences or doorstepping of politicians in order that they are seen to respond to the public, because they are not there to, you know, they shouldn't be there for the paycheck. They should be there for the people. They're elected, they're put in that position by people to do. So they should answer to the people. And the fact that we have not had a press conference with this new government is astoundingly bad.
So I'm wearing my hat here not as a civil servant, but just as an observer. Coming in the way they have come in, trying to reorganize, trying to get things organized, Christmas through that entire process, and then now stepping into the new year.
They were all in the job the week before, except for Wayne.
I'm not putting anybody into a limelight saying they should be or should not be. I do know they're on the radio quite often, and For the Record is back on next week with their open line as well. But I will say this, yes, is press conference definitely needed? Yeah, I would actually not have criticized them for the 2 months, but I do think, yeah, absolutely, press conferences should be coming in the near future.
It should have been the day after, but I mean, they were all in.
They
were all in their jobs, with the exception of a little tiny reshuffle. They were all in their jobs before, and besides which, they don't do the work. The civil servants do the work. They're supposed to just guide policy. So, you know, I think having a press conference and explaining to us what happened and telling us. I mean, the Premier came on here just a few days after and spoke about, you know, the change, and she spoke about other people being in the cabinet. Well, we all want to know who those other people were. We haven't had a chance to ask her that. You know, obviously, why did things unfold the way they did? Why, you know, how has the budget changed? It's a different budget from what was planned before. There are a lot of questions that we all have, and they're not, and the people have them too. You know.
No, fair.
And as we said before, without a policy platform, and you have the situation of, like, there's another issue that I think we need to talk about is, and that will be a big story later on this year, is campaign finance.
I have that on my list. We will bring it up right after our 1:30 news. I do want to get one feel-good story from Ralph, because we haven't had a feel-good story. Not to go full circle, but you know what? Everyone's had their feel-good moment. You got to give me one. You
know, if you have listened to me and read my publication, you see it's a feel-good publication. So I have different views on news. And one of the reasons why I got into this business is because what I found is that news wasn't being read as it used to be. And what people getting tired of the negative stories that were always being published. And so therefore our goal at Caymanian Times was to sort of highlight the feel-good stories and highlight the achievements of our people, especially young people. So that's the route that we took. So if you look at our front pages, you'll see that they have majority of feel-good stories. Now, the thing is that they're being read. And I know that for sure because I'm more into that. So there are many feel-good stories. Just so much of them for me to identify one. I remember that cover story where we saw Mr. Johnny Banks from the Lions gotten his golden jacket.
Yes.
And that was a huge achievement. If you know what the Lions Club does for the country,
that's a lifetime achievement.
And his commitment over the years, this is the kind of things that people need to be aware of and get other people involved. And so by celebrating with Mr. Johnny Banks for what he's achieved, it just sort of set an example. And other people are now jumping on board doing things that really helps the community. And this is where we started to get the community to speak together and try to get on the same platforms and the same ideas of, for example, environment. We have to have the conversations and get people together to come to understand what's happening. And by having these kind of stories, it encourages people. Instead of being combative, we can involve people and communicate with them. And that's where we stand with Caymanian Times. Regarding press briefings, I do believe that we have to be reasonable to the new government. It's just a couple of weeks. And we had Christmas, they had to get a budget in place. I know about budget. Guys work for government. And it's a lot of work to do. And then there's Christmas and everything. So I expect to have a press briefing this month. And they said that they would have one. Now, it's not only this government. We've been asking all governments in the past to have more press briefings. I've done so. Even the past government, thank God for Mr. Kenneth Bryan, he came and had a few press briefings during the year when there was not many. So it's not only this new government that should have a press briefing. All the other previous governments, I remember in Alden, didn't want to have that much press briefings. But we know about it. So it goes back to a habit or what has happened in the past with governments, that they never had press briefings. And I've been in this business for 10 years, and I can tell you, I was surprised that there was not enough press briefings. With the pandemic, of course, there was no other choice. So we tend to have press briefings regularly, and even if I say, are we going to continue to have press briefings? And unfortunately, up until now, it's not happening. So I've been patient with this new government, and I've said, okay, Christmas is good, but I expect to have a press briefing.
I think modern politicians don't feel that they need to, though, and I think that's a sad thing. They think that because they have social media access themselves, that they can do their own press, and that therefore the need to talk to the people via the press is no longer something that they need to worry about. And also because of the way politics works in Cayman, and again back to party financing and the fact that people are running very, very district levels, it's very constituency dread. Whether that was even back in the olden days when we were doing the 6th district, the various members in it, it was still very district-led campaigning. And they don't necessarily, and all you need to do, if your base is with you here, if as a politician, if you have your base in your constituency, then you can win. And we know how little you need to win. So they don't always feel that they need to answer to the public because they're going to win in any event. There are certain politicians that are, it's going to be almost impossible to remove them because they have just enough base in their constituencies that they will succeed time and time again. And answering to the public's not necessary.
We have to go to 1:30 break, but I've read in some one of your publications, I do read all your publications, about the communication with government and not having. Well, I can't remember which one I read it when.
Glad to pick that one up after the break.
So when we come back from 1:30 break, Andrel, mic's in your hand. Back with more talk today, right after this.
Jingle all the way into the season of incredible savings and wish granting with Digicel. This Christmas, get 25% off your Prime Bundle plan or postpaid bill for the next 6 months. With plans featuring social data, entertainment data, and more, Digicel keeps you connected and entertained all season long. But here's the real magic. Digicel could make your Christmas wish come true. Win a prize of your choice, from getting your rent paid to a new laptop or even a brand new car. Visit a Digicel store today, where dreams come true this holiday season.
Find your dream car with a Cayman National Vehicle Loan. Enjoy 100% financing, up to 8-year repayment, and a 7% fixed interest rate for the first 5 years. For eco-friendly cars, we'll waive your commitment fee. This only applies to new vehicles until December 31st, 2023. Call 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
They say variety is the spice of life. And that's why at Subway, we're introducing the new boneless hot sub. Say what? The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skin care, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Texting while driving causes 40% of road fatalities in the Cayman Islands.
Mommy, put your phone down.
Just 1 minute, honey. I need to send a message to your dad.
Mommy!
But what if she wasn't texting while driving?
What if she just waited until she got home?
What if we just put down our phones and stopped to think? What if, as a community, we rose to the challenge of keeping our roads safe? What if we came together to stop these accidents and fatalities?
What if we all walked the road to zero
and decided no more in 2024?
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. In case you're just tuning in, I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, and pleased to have in studio Mr. Andrel Harris from Cummings Media, Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service, and Mr. Ralph Lewis from Caymanian Times. And earlier in the show, we did have Miss April Cummings from our own Radio Cayman. Here with the Media Roundtable, just discussing a wide range of topics, from issues that affect the public to issues that affect the media themselves. So, Andrel, before the break, we said we're going to come back to you, and we were talking about the press briefings, and Wendy had brought up the absence of press briefings. One, since this new government's come in, and I think we've all kind of accepted that it's a relatively short period of time, and hopefully in the near future we do start seeing them happen. But then Ralph brought up that historically it's actually been a relatively quiet front on press briefings.
Yeah. So let me premise everything that I'm about to say with a very wise lesson I was taught early on in my relatively short career, which is it is my job as a journalist to ask, and it is on the part of my interviewee to decide whether or not to answer and or how to answer. So the reality is, our job will always be to present the questions, the tough questions, the intrusive questions. That's just the nature of our job. The compass has been very clear and vocal of a lack of transparency on the part of the previous administration, reshuffled into what it is now. And at the base of that is several unanswered emails, several unanswered requests for information, delayed, drawn-out FOIs, an entire process that is nothing short of frustrating. Fortunately, we have very dogmatic reporters who will hang on and not let go, and we'll see this thing all the way through. So the people can rest assured that the journalists are on the job. But in the vein of whether or not we should be having press conferences, it is quite simple. The people need to hear from their elected officials. If they choose not to have a press conference, as is their right, they should then find a medium outside of the press conference to provide the answers to the people. And what we're finding, exactly, and what we're finding is that there are no press conferences, and then requests for information are going unanswered or delayed or pushed back for a multitude of reasons. And I'll make it very abundantly clear, from what I can see, the blame does not lie with the government information services, the communications department, whoever, whatever their names might be. They're very diligent. We send requests to them, and we get back responses clearly stating that they're chasing up the matter. They're on the ball. They're working very hard. That department, that specific unit in government, deserves all the accolades to be laid at their doorstep. They do an amazing job. Where the problem lies is obviously with elected officials who, for one reason or next, will not come in a vastly large public forum to be questioned by a multitude of reporters. Now, the problem on the surface of it, it might appear that perhaps we have an axe to grind in our various media outlets because, boo-hoo, we're not getting responses and so on and so forth. But that's far from the reality. The reality is, while the everyday constituent might be able to walk up to their elected officials in a grocery store or at the gas station or go on their live Facebook page and watch or whatever their Instagram, Snapchat, whatever the politicians are using and follow for the updates, and or, I don't need to worry because I'm going to see them at Christmas, and or my uncle's cousin's brother is related to this politician so I can get some kind of family line connection. The nature of the political landscape is such that anyone with a genuine interest in the public will be able to track down their elected official. That's the case. This isn't the U.S. where the average Joe will never be able to speak to a representative, whatever the case might be. But the issue, as I see it, is quite frankly investment. I'll tell you who is not going on the pages of these elected officials. Those are external investors. The people who are deciding whether or not Cayman is the place to set up the new industry. The people who are needing to decide whether or not the perks and benefits that they want to see are available in Cayman. Because when they go looking for the information, they're not going to the private investor, into the private elector's page. They're going to the traditional and, or dare I say not so traditional, news outlets. They're going to the Cayman News Service, the Cayman Compass, the Caymanian Times, Cayman Moore Road. They're going to these established media houses, and that's where they're looking for their information. And when headline after headline after headline keeps saying the same thing, lack of transparency, government fails to answer, we do not know what's going on with this. We've been asking these questions. We can't get any answers. Here are the new changes. We're not sure how it will impact.
Sure.
This level of uncertainty is bad for consumer investment. And what you'll find is that the ministries then going to have to, in various sections, are going to have to do overtime. They're the ones who are going to have to go back out and do the groundwork and spend millions of taxpayer money to try and solve that fall short, to try and boost back consumer investment and get people back in. And this is not me saying that, investors are running away from Cayman.
No,
most certainly not.
But they are doing the research.
But they are doing their research. And part of the impact of government silence and refusal to speak and refusal to engage will be those knock-on effects.
And politicians, quite simply, are representatives of the people. They should not be allowed, if you like, to get away with this constant dodging of the issues. For you go out there on the campaign platform once every 4 years, you put your head above the parapet and say, vote for me because I can fix it. Well, you didn't fix it. You didn't fix anything. So, and this happens election cycle after election cycle. Sure. We are growing. Our problems in Cayman are growing. They're not lessening. I mean, can you think, are there less, do you do less news stories now than you used to? Because I certainly don't.
Ralph, you do less stories these days.
One of the principles of every democracy. So every democracy depends on 4 pillars. right? There's the legislature, parliament. Parliament is supreme. And there's the executive, the civil servants who actually do what parliament's wishes, makes parliament's wishes come true. And then you have the judiciary, and the judiciary is responsible for interpreting the wishes of parliament, right? I hope Miss Minty is listening. That Constitution lecture paid off. Parliament's wishes must be interpreted by the judiciary. But the fourth and silent branch of every stable democracy.
I don't know about silent, but
certainly, yeah, ironically, the often not spoken of branch is the media. The fourth estate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
look, you all took the same class, man.
And so as long as the fourth estate is being treated like the abandoned child or the wayward child.
And we can get mean, so they're probably, making a big mistake in some respects. Well, I think there's evidence of that some of us can get mean. And I think it's not... The press, you can't. Yes, in Cayman, like you said, you can meet Wayne in the supermarket. You can bump into Sir Alden at Country and Western. If you really want to go talk to him, you go down there. But also, we've got a couple of problems in that the place is getting bigger, and there are more and more people that can't do that. And also, we have an enormous amount of people here that can't participate in elections either. But yet they are still affected. They still pay taxes into the community, and they're affected by what's going on. So, whether it's public transport, which affect low-paid workers that are here, or a gazillion other issues. It's important that politicians are speaking to the public. Now, because they can't speak to all 100,000 of us anymore, they should do it through the press. And the important thing about doing it through the press and doing it in an open, live forum is that they are put on the spot. And if you are a good politician, you should be able to do it. That's the whole point of you being a politician. You're supposed to develop policy, and you're supposed to be able to defend that policy. So if you come up with a policy that the people don't like, then you've got to defend it.
I mean, if
backtrack, one or the other.
If history is any indication of what the future might be, just look on the way that the political landscapes have developed throughout the British Commonwealth, or anywhere that employs the Westminster system of Parliament. It is quite simple. Running afoul of the media will ultimately transgress against the people. And that's not to say that, the media will sabotage you or whatever the case is. Most certainly not. Look on the British. Exactly. What history is showing is, quite frankly, the media is an important element to good governance and just having a stable country. And as long as you continue to put the media outside of that equation, which you're ultimately going to find yourself in, it's just more turmoil down the long road.
We have to go to commercial break in a moment. And we have one caller on the line when we come back from our break. But to put this out there, because I want to tackle it as well, we're talking right now about media houses holding government and political officials to account in whichever respect that might be. There's also the flip side of that conversation, because we're not living in that media utopia, where there are media houses that have their own agendas. In the same way that we have campaign financing for politicians, we have advertising and private interests supporting various media houses. At some point in this show, I wouldn't mind tackling a bit of that, and we will get to that campaign finance. I know you want to tackle that as well. Let's go to 1:45 break, and then we have one caller on the line. Back with more Talk Today right after this.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Discover your dream home with Cayman National's home loan. Get up to 95% financing, repayment up to 40 years, and just a 0.5% commitment fee. Your interest rate? Depending on your risk factors, it'll be fixed or variable. Plus, you get a pre-approved credit card. This is a limited time offer. Dial 949-8300 or email lending@caymanational.com today.
Are you a Caymanian interested in a career in the TVET sector? The Ministry of Education is now offering grants to fund short-term TVET courses at registered local institutions. Whether you're looking to upskill, transition to a new career, or find employment, this grant is for you. To learn more and apply, visit www.moescholarship.gov.ky. Invest in your future with a local TVET grant today. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Education.
January is Glaucoma Awareness Month. The Lions Club of Grand Cayman encourages you to make a New Year's resolution to learn more about glaucoma. Glaucoma can cause vision loss and blindness which can't be reversed. There are no early symptoms, and more than half of the people who have glaucoma don't know they do. Some people over 40 are at higher risk than others, mostly African Americans and Hispanics. The only way to know if you have glaucoma is to have a comprehensive dilated eye examination. These are the facts. Make a resolution for healthier vision. Your eyes will thank you. Schedule your comprehensive dilated examination today and encourage your friends and family to do so as well. This message brought to you by the Lions Club of Grand Cayman.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. In the studio, we have Mr. Andrel Harris from Compass Media, Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service, and Mr. Ralph Lewis from Caymanian Times with our Media Roundtable. And we do have one caller on the line. Good afternoon, caller. Thank you for calling Talk Today.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Okay, and good afternoon to you guys also.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I'd like to share something with you all and the listening public.
Yes, sir.
It was written by King Solomon. Efforts to establish a justice system that really works seem to have failed. Many fall victim to cruelty and oppression, finding themselves in a helpless situation. What makes things worse is that there are people in powerful positions who, instead of upholding justice, oppress their poor fellow men. King Solomon's words, written 3 millennia ago, still ring true to this day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. I appreciate you calling in. And to your point, I mean, with the absence of information, the reality is democracy really does die in a vacuum, right? So if you don't have that level of communication with the public, it can be a challenge. Ralph, we haven't heard from you in a spell here. You've been avoiding some of the hot topics.
No. I try to give my colleagues the time to explain themselves, and I will in the comment when it needs to be in the comment. On the same topic or on others?
You know what? No, let's stick with the. We were talking about before the break. I'd mentioned on the one hand, we mentioned the politicians and campaign financing, but at the same time, and they have their agendas, political agendas, whether it be from the independents or party politics, or whatever personal agendas might be in the mix there. And then on the flip side, we have the media, which is where we're at today. And so the media, while you're an independent collective body, your individual media houses have your own form of financing via advertisers. You have your own, whatever, it could be political agendas. If you are looking at party politics, you start seeing these split in the media as well, the left-wing, right-wing medias. How does it sit with you when we start talking about you as a private enterprise still representing a independent journalistic body? How do you wrestle with that one?
Well, I'm considered the one who came from outside the box. I'm a banker by profession. And so
I didn't know that.
I'm a banker by profession. So
You're one of those bad
I never
guys.
thought I would be in media.
You're one of those bad guys. You caused that whole 08 thing, didn't you?
I know.
Kidding.
So I came into this business with a totally different view.
Sure.
And so therefore, yes, everyone has an agenda. That's who we are as individuals. We have an agenda. Everyone has their preferences. And every business has a goal, which is profitability. There's some who are committed to certain things and others not. Of course, you have sponsors, people who own media houses, and people, of course, they support them. And that's fine. Every business has an agenda. Now, my agenda is to, of course, maintain profitability, but also to provide information to all and to try and balance news. And that's what we do. We look at different issues when we report on what's happening. We tend to be more for information and education. And so what I'm seeing with media houses around the world is that they tend to take sides. And that's fine. And that's how they can take sides. But of course, you can have your choice, but you also have to have some balance with it.
I was going to say, if you're taking sides, you're not really a journalist anymore, are you?
Yes. So you could have your preference, but you can't be reporting in such a way that it is clear that this is your side, you support this party or this group or this particular movement, and that's and that's the way I look at it and I see it. And we try to maintain that balance. But regarding agendas, there's agendas. Everyone has agendas. I mean, the government has an agenda. I'm sure they have. We call it.
They should have it. They should have it.
They have their manifesto, right?
So they have to. And
they should.
And regarding the comments that Andrel mentioned, holding them accountable and being the fourth estate and so on. Yes, media is so important, and we need to make sure we ask the right questions. But I also would say that there has to be a balance again, because as a person listening to some of the press briefings, not only in the Cayman Islands, overseas, there's a level of respect that's given to international.
Oh, great point there.
Press briefings that I don't see in the Cayman Islands. The way we approach and we question a politician or a minister, we should give them respect. We can ask them a hard question, but the way we approach them in the questioning, we need to understand that they are individuals speaking from power. Yeah. And if you're in a press briefing asking a minister, you need to address the minister accordingly. And the way that the question is it, you don't just be seen as trying to catch out this individual, but rather ask them a question and get an answer. And sometimes, from what I've seen, there are certain questions that can be seen as ones where we are targeting a certain individual, and of course put them in a very uncomfortable position. And I've heard responses from ministers, I don't want to call names, who said that they prefer not to have press briefings because the media is trying to catch them out and put them in a spot where they're embarrassing them. And we should not be putting them in that situation.
Do you think it's not more important that the politicians shouldn't put themselves in a position where they can be embarrassed? Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, but the idea of respect, I mean, yes. As somebody who has certainly received no respect whatsoever from any politicians here, it's not my job to respect them. They put their heads above the parapet and said, I can solve the problems. So go ahead and solve them. I don't see you solving. So I'm sorry, but no, respect is something that's earned, and it shouldn't be given to someone just because they've got a title. They got elected and got a title. No, it needs to come from, and we should be not about catching them out. We shouldn't have to catch them out. They should know their stuff. They should be, when they're on the spot and they've come to a press briefing, they should be prepared, and they should know what kind of questions are going to come up.
Well, yes, but there are ways.
If they can't answer the questions, that is their problem, not ours.
So, are you talking about tone? Sorry,
I mean, you can do it politely. I've never not asked a question politely when I've been in a press briefing.
So, is it tone? I mean, look, being respectful doesn't mean I'm not going to ask you a hard question.
Exactly.
And there's a difference between me asking a question and me making a statement and expecting you to respond a certain way when it's not a real question. It's actually clearly, my point here is to point out that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If I ask a question and you don't have the right response or don't know the response, there should be no shame in saying quite honestly, I do not. And Wendy can say, well, I think you're an idiot that you don't know, to herself. But if you're confident about what you're doing, and I often am not in real life, you should be able to confidently say, you know what, I do not have the answer to that right now. That's a very good question. Let me write this down. Let me get my people to write this down. Let's circle back on this in 6 weeks or whatever time period it is that's appropriate. As opposed to...
I don't want to go to a press briefing because they might ask me something I can't answer. And that's absurd. Why are you in the job?
And we're not talking about that. We're talking about the approach. I mean, it's sometimes not what you say, but how you say it. Sure. If you want to communicate with someone, you don't have to be very aggressive and combative.
Don't have to be.
You can get information from someone.
In your head or out loud?
You can get information.
I've never called them an idiot out loud.
But look,
by communicating,
but I think
at a
asking
level,
questions.
I think you're right.
It's more professional, and I think that people appreciate that kind of approach.
And culturally, we prefer you, originally anyway, to be, sir, ma'am, thank you, with all due respect. We've got a lot of this language that we cushion in. Okay, that makes sense.
Nothing wrong with that.
No,
and nothing wrong with it at all.
I haven't heard all the press conferences that we had, or press briefings that we've had. I've never heard any media member become disrespectful.
Irritated.
Irritated. I have heard the irritation.
I'm frustrated because
voices.
Questions are deflected. Or the other line is, we're only going to answer questions today on this subject. That's another one. It's really frustrating. So.
I mean, again, in if I might interject here, I completely understand them saying we're putting in limits to the number of questions you might ask, and or we have a certain topic that we wish to focus on. We're not straying outside of this, that, the other. Quite frankly, that's fine for them to make the rules. I can't guarantee that I will play by all those rules because at the end of the day, there are certain questions that I must ask. I simply must ask. That's the nature of the job.
As you said, if they don't want to answer that, then that's something that people can see for themselves.
Yeah, that's on them. But it is not for me as a journalist to worry about whether or not I make you cry.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, it's not my responsibility. I have to ask my questions. At the same time, I must treat the whoever I'm speaking to with the same degree of respect I would wish to be treated. The problem we have is that unfortunately respect seems to be a moral matter which may never truly align between two persons. And so what I might consider to be very respectful, because I could have asked in a completely different tone, might come across as purely disrespectful because how dare I even ask it in the first place?
That's a different... That's a different issue, really.
And I've certainly been on the receiving end of that on many occasions.
Sure.
Of like how I dared to ask it.
Yeah.
Well, easy. I opened my mouth and words came out.
But no. But great.
But wouldn't you rather, if you were in the public and you had questions that need to be answered, have someone ask them?
Yeah. And that's what it boils down to. And going back to Ralph's point.
Very quickly, we do have to go to
2 p.m.
news.
Because we have news at 2.
Hold that thought, if you don't mind. Let's go to 2 p.m. news, and then we'll come right back to you after that.
Oh, okay.
If not, I get in trouble. Back with more Talk Today right after this.
www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Check out our social media pages: Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, Radio Cayman Headline News.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Standing Public Accounts Committee will hold a public hearing on Thursday, January 11th at 10 a.m. on the Auditor General's Report, Financial Reporting of the Cayman Islands Government, General Report, December 31st, 2022. In international news, a suicide prevention net at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco has finally been completed, officials say. Around 2,000 people are known to have jumped to their deaths from the bridge since it opened in 1937 in the U.S. city. For decades, families who have lost loved ones to suicide at the bridge have called for a solution. The suicide deterrent system, also known as the net, has been installed around approximately 95% of the 1.7-mile bridge. People who got trapped in 1,000 vehicles in heavy snow for more than 24 hours have been evacuated, Swedish authorities say. Rescuers worked through the night to free people stuck on the main road in southern Sweden. Many of those trapped were evacuated by rescue teams and told to return to their cars later. The travel chaos occurred amid plummeting winter temperatures across the Nordic countries. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Zollins.
www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Check out our social media pages: Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, Radio Cayman Headline News.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. I'm Raymond Singh, filling in for Mr. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. We've had a little bit of a hot potato musical chairs going on here in the studio. Now joining us, we still have Andrel Harris here from Compass Media, Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service, April Cummings has returned, and Ralph Lewis from Caymanian Times has had to depart a bit early. Not because of any intimidating conversation.
Not because we scared him or anything.
Nobody has scared him
did
off.
not
He just
happen.
business does call. Andrel, I promise to come back to you after the break.
Yeah, I was going back to the point that Ralph had raised about, every media house having an agenda, and I sat and I thought about it long and hard. I often try to write my articles as objective as possible. That is to say, not to pollute it with my own opinions, thoughts, whatever the case might be. I've written articles that on a moral level I completely disagree with. But at the end of the day, it's none of my business what my morals might be when it comes to addressing a particular topic that affects the vast majority, if not everybody in Cayman, right? And then when I sat back and I thought about it, I realized that even if I don't have an agenda and I'm not, members of the media aren't secretly meeting every Tuesday night at some random house.
Sadly.
Exactly, putting together our plans for the months ahead. Just the mere fact that I chose to use one word over a next might cause people to think, well, why didn't he say this or why did he say that? And, he clearly has an agenda here or there. When quite frankly, I have a very narrow word count that I need to hit and still tell the story and advance my article with each sentence.
My boss is my agenda. She set us clear policy.
A lot of people don't understand that we are constrained to a certain extent.
There's
and headlines
time.
are headlines, they're not sentences.
Yeah, and also there is usually more than one person in the chain. Maybe not as much in Wendy's case because of the size of the operation, but there is usually an editor or someone who subs your scripts or your copy. And look, I got into an argument many years ago about whether people are biased or not. I'm like, well, of course we all naturally have views and ideas, but we work very hard in this field to try to either remain as objective as possible or at least present the various views. Sometimes that's not the best way to tell a story, and sometimes it actually does the public a disservice. So if he said this and she said this, but with my own eyes, I see context and stuff that's happening, and I leave all of that out.
We're observers, though, and I think sometimes that's a problem with objectivity.
It's a challenge.
Objectivity is certainly the main goal. For sure it is.
Yeah.
And I think, but name me a media house in the world that really is objective. It's not going to happen.
But we should still
and when you
try
see
to
it
do this
with your own eyes, and also a really good example, and obviously is my agenda, a good example is the environmental issue, because climate science has been undoubted for years, for decades, but for whatever reason, well, we know for whatever reason because of the amount of money that was involved in it, but many media houses across the world gave far too much weight to the three stupid scientists that still felt that there was no global warming, or if it was, it had nothing to do with greenhouse gas emissions. So unfortunately that stalled our ability to battle, because without that acceptance that this is what's happening on the planet, because we gave far too much weight to the possibility it might not be, has distorted the arguments. And when it's also when you see injustices. I mean, Andrel and I spend an awful lot of time in the courts and doing crime, so we do see injustices. We do see, and you see it with your own eyes, and it can often be extremely difficult to be objective when you've heard the evidence, you've seen the case, you've seen the child that was abused or hurt or damaged in some way. It is very difficult to remain objective and to give both sides of that story. And I mean, that's often, the criticism that we get, well, you didn't really give both sides, because the thing is, well, I'm sorry, but in this case, your side wasn't really a side. It just didn't exist. And objectivity can be very challenging. But also, when it comes to opinion pieces or analysis,
those are different.
Then in a private, certainly not in a government organisation, but in private sector news houses like Andrel and Cayman News, the Compass and Cayman News Service, we have to at least we have the, if you like, the gift of being able to write opinion pieces or analysis pieces that come from a place that our own experiences as journalists.
That's the beauty of the
given us
editorial
the thing. And I get it all the time that I'm
Yes.
way too biased when it comes to talking about environment versus development, and that I criticise the Central
Okay,
Planning
but you've
Authority
always
too
been
much.
clear
But
that
you know
that's your agenda.
Yeah, and
So
I haven't pretended that it's not. So
yeah.
I like how you started the conversation with objective and then end the conversation. Yeah, but that's my stuff. That's what I got. It's my line.
So
I do have to call a quick pause. We do have one caller on the line.
Callers, excited.
Headsets, please. Good afternoon, caller. Thanks for calling Talk Today.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for the panel that's there.
Thank you, sir.
For the most part, the wider journalistic community.
Yes, sir.
One thing of interest is, how do you define, as journalists, what borders you cross? Are you, and I'm asking this individually to a collective, are you investigative journalists, or are you simply with the news that has been issued? An example of this is actually a real case here, but almost similarly, the patterns the same around the world. Let's just take a very, very divisive topic, but a critical subject as the COVID pandemic and the vaccine. Back 2021, 22, and after, many concerns were raised about the efficacy of these vaccines. And there was only one side, historically one side. And it seemed that no journalist group, including the panelists there, unless I missed some, ever attempted to entertain that it could be science to support the opposing views. Now, today we're seeing, some 2 years later, that such a horrific result of a very narrow position that had been echoed across the world as to the efficacy of these vaccines. And we've seen many who have once touted the view that they were efficacious and safe and rewarded the results are saying, actually, no, they weren't. Why hasn't it that our local journalist community here, including yourselves, have never challenged or considered to challenge the efficacy of what was reported to be efficacious, and consider that, well, there could be something else to this? Is it that we're not investigative journalists, or do we simply just take the position of the majority or the government or your employers to run a story?
Caller, I appreciate the question, honestly. Thank you so much. What I'll do is let you go now, and I'll turn to our panel and have them answer the question regarding the investigative journalism versus reporter side. Thank you so much for the call. Andrel.
Sure.
Let's go around Taylor.
Okay. So let me start by saying, quite frankly, at the time of the COVID pandemic, the Cayman Compass was under different ownership. And at that point in time, the Compass's ownership made a very clear stance on the way they wished to see the vast majority of the reporting done. There is no secret there. There are opposing groups who've approached the Compass and have in writing the Compass's position in that regard. I will say, without fear of persecution, I, at times, challenged whichever side was presented to me, whether it be on a live press conference. I remember there was one point where I questioned the governor himself on when the status of the COVID vaccines would be changed. That is to say, the NHS had at the time stated that the COVID vaccines were only to be administered in emergency circumstances, and I challenged the governor on that point, to which he responded that, a thorough review was underway and reassured the community that the vaccines were safe. I also attended several rallies and did live stream broadcasts with multiple persons who protested the administration of COVID vaccines, which gave the dissenting voice a live chance to speak unfiltered, mind you, still presented with very tough questions, simply to provide a balance. And I have also done articles which shed the light on the negative impacts of the COVID, and not so much the vaccine where that is concerned. So I can speak for myself to say that I have done stories and I've provided a platform to dissenting voices around the COVID vaccine. Nonetheless, who it is who that pays the piper calls the tune. I have a salary. I need a salary just like everyone else, and this is not an excuse. I have a job, and my job is very clear, to provide the information, and I provided the information. To that extent, I say that the Compass took a very firm stance and provided as clear information as I think could have been provided in the time. And I will also say that I have since been engaged in a very, very frustrating and tiring battle, which I've already lost the first 3 rounds of with the courts, to provide an open and transparent audit of how they dealt with people who transgressed against the COVID regulations. The courts have sealed the records, in essence, will not allow me to come and see how these matters were dealt with. I've asked, and the Ombudsman's office has sided with the courts. So the people of Cayman may never know how the courts truly addressed this issue. And that is to say,
I mean by breaching the law.
Breaching the law, where we had international headlines where 2 persons were jailed for breaking the rules, and then we have an entire slew of people who got no punishment, and everything was swept under the rugs.
Including police officers.
Including police officers. And the courts have shut the door on those records and will not allow us to see it.
So not to interrupt Andrel, because he's my favorite passionate reporter of all time.
You got the one under.
I love Wendy too, though. So just to go back to the very first part of the question, which I know
I do want to come back to, but you have to go to our last. You know what? Finish your thought.
It's just the gentleman asked whether we are journalists, investigative journalists, or reporters, and that depends on the day, the story, what else is going on, what we have time to do properly. I hate to say it, but sometimes it's best to not do a story at all if you cannot do the rest of the work.
If you can't get all that meat that you need for that story.
Just the facts. Just the facts. But COVID was a little different, and we can come back to that later.
Please, thank you. Let's go to a commercial break. We come back, we'll jump on that last COVID part, and then Wendy, your chance to address. And we do have one caller who's been patiently waiting. Back with more talk today, right after this.
How can you make a classic BLT sandwich even better? Well, by adding tuna. Wow. The land meets the sea in Subway's new sandwich, the Tuna BLT, available for a limited time. The Tuna BLT is exploding with flavor. Imagine crispy, juicy bacon strips on top of tuna, fresh lettuce, and slices of tomato, topped with your favorite sauce and choice of freshly baked bread. Enjoy the best of both worlds with the Tuna BLT from Subway. Subway, eat fresh.
Jingle all the way into the season of incredible savings and wish granting with Digicel. This Christmas, get 25% off your Prime Bundle plan or postpaid bill for the next 6 months. With plans featuring social data, entertainment data, and more, Digicel keeps you connected and entertained all season long. But here's the real magic. Digicel could make your Christmas wish come true. Win a prize of your choice, from getting your rent paid to a new laptop or even a brand new car. Visit a Digicel store today, where dreams come true this holiday season.
Freedom, Cayman Rack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Find your dream car with a Cayman National Vehicle Loan. Enjoy 100% financing, up to 8-year repayment, and a 7% fixed interest rate for the first 5 years. For eco-friendly cars, we'll waive your commitment fee. This only applies to new vehicles until December 31st, 2023. Call 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Listen to the general public.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255.
What the public is saying.
Let your voice be heard. And now,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
And welcome back to Talk Today. In case you're just tuning in for the tail end of our show, we have our media roundtable. Mr. Andrel Harris from Compass Media, Miss Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service, and Miss April Cummings from Radio Cayman. And earlier in the show, we did have Mr. Ralph Lewis from Caymanian Times. We do have one caller on the line. Good afternoon, caller. Good afternoon, caller.
Been listening to this discussion.
Good afternoon, sir.
And it's, I think there probably needs to be more of this type of stuff, aired. Number one, I think cable news has muddied the whole journalistic approach very much. In other words, on cable news, you see people on there sort of saying they're news people, but they're no more than junior editorialists. At one point, okay? I think in Cayman, the media has come a long way. If you go back, way back. If this type of discussion was even going on in closed doors, and the word got it, and there were instances of this, then you could hear that there may be retributions coming along to this type of discussion. I think there's lots of news within the community that goes unreported, and it takes a concerted effort to get to the news, to bring it up top and report it. But I think the media in Cayman has come a long way from, and I'll just mention one episode, and that maybe some of you around there probably never heard about it. The Siaga tapes.
Sorry, the Siaga tapes?
Siaga tapes.
Siaga tape.
Oh, the Siaga tape, sorry.
And there was a lot of political angles that played into that. I think on a whole, the word way back was, can't say anything. The word is mum. So you could hardly get anything else. So you really had to go and dig for it. And when you started digging, then of course that kind of morphed into something else. But all in all, I think, the media has come a long way. And I think these type of discussions will do a lot to enlighten the community, who should be the ones that's being served at the bottom line.
I think we all agree, yes. Thank you, sir.
And somebody brought up the COVID angle. Well, internationally, that's still being sorted out. We're trying to see really what happened. And the story is yet to be told, and many of us may never see it. But
however true,
I think it's a good discussion, and maybe one of these sort of roundtables every quarter or something like this would go a long way, because I think politicians in general sometimes really don't want to say anything.
No, I think that was part of the points that were made earlier. Caller, thank you so much. I do have to let you go here, only because we do have a couple points the panelists do want to address, but thank you so much for the call. We do honestly appreciate it. A stalwart in the media yourself. Thank you so much again. Bringing us back to the conversation.
Oh, yes.
Journalistic.
Yeah. So, it's going to sound a little whiny, I suppose, but I don't intend it to be that way. Every day, news people have deadlines. They have outputs, essentially, that have to be done. So Radio Cayman, we've got 7 a.m., 8 a.m., noon, 6 p.m., 10 p.m. Andrel's got, multiple stories that he has to get to press, even though the press is online now. Same for Wendy. So the reality is, when your organizations are very small and you do not have a lot of resources, it is difficult to decide which things to go deep on and which ones not to. Mm-hmm. I could spend weeks on one story, one investigative story, but that means you've got no news in that whole period of time, because I can't do all of that at once. So that is a challenge. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes am quite harsh on us all for our inability to sometimes do what I think is important. I found that in the middle of the national crisis that was COVID, or international crisis that was COVID, I was like, I wish I knew more about these kinds of vaccines and this kind of science and research, but I do not. So I'm going to have to report what's being said as best as possible. I cannot, however, let wild theories and information from random sources that aren't actually even news sources be the thing that I report. I'm just unwilling to do that. Other people may. But I do, to also say that we don't consider, discuss, debate, and argue amongst ourselves. We all felt like there are other issues about this. Mm-hmm. We just can't get to them all, as I saw it.
I know Wendy hasn't gotten a chance to speak on this.
Sorry, Wendy.
No, that's all right. But answer.
Yeah, no. Part of the issue is people might not understand that if you are to truly put all that effort, the time that it spends for me to chase 4 or 5 different sources so they can point me in the right direction, and then for me to go and read the information and then verify said information, and then get someone to speak to me about that information.
On record.
Which is the hardest part.
Exactly. Because
and on record is critical for us.
And that is it, because until I get someone to speak to it, what I effectively become is a glorified PR agent who is rewriting something that someone else has said. And that in and of itself isn't really news. So for us to be able to provide that in-depth research or investigative journalism comes at a very, very hefty cost, which is feeding the daily beast. And it is very stressful when you get up in the morning and you have 4 or 5 stories and 3 of them have canceled. One is sick, someone can't talk, someone is still looking for the information you need, or the story has changed and now they need to get more information, or they're no longer able to speak and you now need to get their boss to speak. And so when you show up and your editor is like, all right, good morning, where are my 3 stories? You can't, they're in a headlines. So,
and stories they don't write themselves. We have to do it. And I think what the guy was saying, the problem is there was an awful lot of opinion about, anti-vaccine conspiracy theories and all sorts. And I heard endless discussions on these radio stations about people saying, oh, this is terrible, it's whatever it was. People, and the problem is when you're a journalist, you have to go, your hunch is important. It's important that you yourself feel that there's something here. And also, you need facts. You need to be based in fact. And the thing is, I'm not a scientist, the same as April. I have had some experience writing about vaccines in a different place and a different time. And so I am not as afraid of them. And for me, there were no alarm bells for me about that particular vaccine. And I think, the guy who called in said that was...
say that there won't be...
That won't be in time. But he said that it was a horrific result. It wasn't great in how it was handled. There were all sorts of problems with it. But I don't think there was a horrific result. I think in the end, a lot less people have died because of the vaccine. Now, I understand that there are still some issues that maybe some people got sick as a result of having the vaccine. That is everything. Every single medicine has a side effect. I mean, food that you eat has... I'd be more worried about the kind of, food that you're putting into your bodies. I mean, the chemicals that are put in things that we give to our children. That's way worse.
That's the vaccine issue. Then there's
and this is a problem. These things balloon, you see.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult when you're a one... In mine, Nikki's case at Cayman News Service, there are just the 2 of us, as much as people have wanted to say that we're owned by MI17 and Moses and Wayne and like all sorts of all of this money that, no, seriously, it's just me and Nikki. And I do the writing and she does absolutely everything else.
You're not spies.
And I don't have time. I couldn't go to Beijing. I didn't have time. And there was no planes out, so it's not like you could go and investigate anything. At the end of the day, there were all sorts of issues surrounding COVID. But how, I think for us in Cayman, it was how we were handling it as a community that was important. And that was what we all had to be on top of. And those are the questions that we were asking.
And there are now questions to ask again.
Yeah, it's a different thing. But, right now, the death toll on COVID has gone right down. We haven't lost anybody. I don't even think since the very beginning of this year, I have to say, I can't remember. But, it hasn't been an issue for us in the last year or so, or even around the world. And we have new problems now that we all are very well aware of. Look. And we don't, none of us, not one single news house in the Cayman Islands has the resources to do real investigative journalism. There isn't. We're all capable of it. I certainly think all 3 of us sitting around here, and there are a couple of other people out there that are more than capable of it. But the and remember, financing for media has gone down the pan completely. I mean, we are all so much. I mean, I would dare say that, especially because April and I have been in the business quite a bit longer, that she will probably agree with me that we're both earning probably half of what we were earning 20 years ago, because of what's happened. And so for young people coming into journalism, I'm really sorry about that because it's a great job, but there's no money anymore.
And it's a hard job. It is a hard job.
But if we don't do it, I mean, this is the thing, we're going to go through a phase, we have to find another way of how we're going to finance it because social media has ripped the censor out of it. And unfortunately, no one on social media doesn't need checking. So I think we all know that the reason why mainstream media is still important is because before we put anything on paper, because of the backgrounds that we all have as real journalists, we check stuff. Yeah. We have we have a legal department, which in Cayman News Service is me, so I have to.
but the reality is
double check myself.
It's and you will make mistakes on occasion. I'm not saying there's a perfection here. It is an arduous process. I listened to my own newscast from yesterday and thought, how did I not hear myself mispronounce that many basic words in one day? And the truth is, people are tired, man. Yeah. You hustle, you work hard, you don't always get it right. Yeah. I have no problem with correcting mistakes, with trying to do better. But I have to say this, with radio in particular, and video's the same, if you're not willing to put your name on the tape or your face in the story, it is very difficult to tell it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And that's a
very
challenge
hard.
here still to this day. Getting people on the record in Cayman still is what's my biggest problem? Okay, where we're going to get to keep going, but financially, but of course that's a problem. But in the day-to-day issues of how you work as a journalist, getting people on the record in Cayman is like getting blood out of a stone sometimes.
It's hard.
And that's a legacy. And the earlier caller, what he was talking about when he was talking about the Singh tapes and things like that, those are the kind of legacies as to why people. And I also think there was a belief, definitely. Certainly when I came here, there was a belief that if you did these things, you would be punished. And I'm not so sure that it's actually real. And I think as time, I pushed the envelope all the way from the minute I got here. And I think, because I was working with Desmond, and Desmond was a pusher, for those that remember him, he was a pusher of envelopes.
You'd be a fun one having this conversation, not going to lie.
I know, and I can always hear him in the background, sometimes, his voice echoing and some of the things he told me. And I learned an awful lot from him. But I often think from my own experience here in 20 years that it isn't as bad. It's certainly, I don't know what it was like when I wasn't here, but it hasn't been as bad whilst I've been here as I was first led to believe when I stepped foot on the island. So I think things have changed, but it's still very difficult to get people to go on record. Even politicians
it's a trust
will tell you things
trust
and they
issue.
don't want to go on record.
Yeah, it's a trust issue, though. They have to trust that you are not trying to bring them down. It's not just politicians, but people. Yeah. And people will say things on record sometimes that they shouldn't say.
Yes.
And as the gatekeeper, that's a challenging, this is a really good story, but if I let them say all of these things on record, they're going to get in a lot of trouble because there is a bit of that I always find a bit of push and pull with. That's important. What needs to be said to move the story forward and bring it to the public isn't always the entire story. Sometimes our job is to just get you to start paying attention to it. But there's more work after that.
I mean, just taking a step back, when COVID happened, I went with James in some very dodgy places, like all the way to the COVID labs where the vaccines from a nasal swab to going into the labs and having to scrub up and, watch them dissect the samples and test everything. Places that if I wasn't required to go with a camera and record him,
you wouldn't have done it. Yeah.
Absolutely not. So the things that we did for journalism is definitely in the vein of investigative.
But just as a reporter, there is great danger in just doing the basics of the job sometimes.
Exactly.
Like, I'm going to go look at what I see and tell you. That's just reporting, right?
Yeah.
That's still dangerous.
I know we're running out of time, so I want to just shift gears ever so slightly, look at me taking over Ray's show.
Hey, bro, listen, I'm with you all the way here.
Back to that very important point where, the media is very important, absolutely important. But what people must also understand is that as much as we might be here banging on in our various publications, or however that might appear, about a lack of transparency or whatever the case might be, the media in our various forms, by and large, hold ourselves accountable to a certain standard. And so there's a lot more that we might want, a lot more that we may wish we could get. In whether it be resources or the ability to cover certain topics or
access to certain situations and scenes and
but there is a fair balance, and I can understand. One day, should I throw my hat in the ring? I can understand the perspective of a politician who says, I was elected by the people. They're the people who I'm accountable to. I'm not accountable to Andrel over at the Compass.
Yeah, they're not,
but
Andrel
no
is
loyalties or obligations.
Andrel is working in his capacity.
Exactly.
Is working for the people.
And that's the important thing that they forget.
Even
I think the only one that doesn't is Kenneth Bryan, who has, out of all of he has taken advantage of all of the opportunities that there are on the radio. He answers questions. He answers his phone. He's not, because Kenneth isn't afraid of the people, because he knows he did this job before and he knows he should be accountable to them, because he spent several years holding his predecessors to account.
Exactly.
And it makes a big difference, and I think that's why that's why I think he did so well in his campaigns. For somebody who came from nowhere, if you like, and to have such a great result, is because of his ability to do that.
I I think that is an excellent place for us to recap, because I'm now afraid of my producer in the background who's going to kick me off the air in a moment. Folks, I do actually want to say a big thank you to all. This was, I think, a much needed call for conversation. I wish Ralph could have stayed the whole show, but we all have responsibilities. Thank you all again, and hopefully Dwayne can pick it back up and maybe do these every couple quarters and keep the vibe alive. On that note, we do need to call it a wrap for today's show. Thank you again to all of our loyal listeners out there in Radio Cayman Nation. Our guests, Mr. Andrel Harris, Miss April Cummings, Miss Wendy Ledger, and Mr. Ralph Lewis, who was here earlier. On behalf of the entire Radio Cayman family, thank you again. Have a very happy Thursday. I'm Raymond Singh, and God bless.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama. And now, Barbados. And Digicel, Cayman's bigger, better network. And Doctors Hospital. Peace of mind is important when life happens. Doctors Hospital, always there for you. Call 949-6066.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.